I'm the little girl who used to make her own doll clothes for Jenny Doll and Barbie. That dates me, of course. And then I went on to take sewing in 7th grade and loved my 7th grade sewing teacher and making my apron. I'm Linda Lee with the Sewing Workshop Pattern Collection. I travel and teach the art of fine sewing. I'm an author, and I also teach classes online. The world of knits has really changed since I started to sew. I used to sew pretty much with just cotton knits. But now, just like fashion out there on the ready-to-wear racks, knits take on a very different look. From cotton knits, of course, to viscose knits, polyester knits, and pretty much everything in between. And the textures have really changed too. So that sewing them can be tricky, and hemming them is especially important because the hemming is usually happening on the cross grain, which is the stretchiest part of the knit, and that's where you can get into trouble. Some of the knits that we find on the racks today and in the fabric stores as well are things like lacy open weave knits. Here's a viscose one and a wool one. The crinkle knits are very popular, and you can imagine that that can be very tricky to sew. Sweater knits fall into this category. And then slinky knit. We see that as well, especially for pants and loose tops. I've brought a couple of garments to show you as examples of how the hem techniques that we would use on these garments. This is a nice little open weave lacy stretch knit, and this is a sweater knit in a t-shirt. So I'm going to show you how to control these fabrics. I'm going to show you how to prepare your hems and how to finish your hems as well. To prepare them, I like to use something called a template, and I use a manila file folder cut to the width of my finished hem. So let's say my hem is about 1 1/4 inches wide. I put that template on the wrong side of the fabric so that I can press the hem up and over the bottom of this template, meeting the raw edge of the fabric to the top of the template. That ensures that you're going to get a really even hem in a fabric that wants to wiggle on you. It also gives you what I call a memory crease, so that you can go back to this hem when you're ready to finish the garment and you know where your hem should be. Now this is a material called a fusible web tape. It looks like paper, and it does have a paper covering. But this is one method to get a hem fused in place. So I'm still on the wrong side of my hem, down towards the raw edge, and I'm pressing this in place, adhering this tape to the fabric. Now I want to tear off the paper, and you can see that what's left is this little tacky line of glue. I can fold the hem in place because of my memory crease. I know exactly where that should be folded, and I'm going to fuse the hem down. So when I sew this, it's not going to move, but it still has some give to it. That's one method. A second method is to use another kind of material, which is a fusible hem tape. This is a tricot. It comes in rolls in black and white and a natural color. It's usually about 1/2 inch wide. And there's a fusy side, a gluey side, which is textured, and a smooth side. So again, I have my memory crease on my little sample here. I'm working on a sweater knit. So it has some good stretch to it, and it's a little bit bulkier. I'm going to lay that on the bottom of the hem with the fusible side up. And boy, do you want to make sure of that, because of course you don't want these irons to get on the fusibles. So I have set my needle position just to the center, normal stitching, normal stitch length, and I'm going to sew just down the center of this. Of course, I'd be using matching thread. You don't want to pull this, just lay it smooth and make sure it's kind of on the inside of the hem so that when you fold the hem and press it, then it's not going to peek out. This could be also serged on if you wanted to, but because it's only fusible on one side, it does have to be adhered either with a serger or sewing machine. So I'm going to take this to the iron and we'll press this one down. I like to use this method when I have a particularly stretchy fabric, something like a slinky or something where it's not particularly transparent because this material obviously would show through. But again, that's adhered down. It's not quite as stretchy, so it's going to control the hem even more. There's a third way to adhere a hem as well, and that is using a temporary spray adhesive. Now, you want to use some paper for the overspray, bigger piece than what I'm showing you here. Again, I have my memory crease. We're going to give that a light little touch of glue, and we'll take this to the iron and fuse it down. So all three methods accomplish the same thing, and what I suggest doing is making a sample on whatever fabric you are using, because you never know which method is going to hold the fabric best. Now it's time to talk about how to actually stitch the hems in place. And one of the most important things that you will want to acquire as part of your sewing accessory ensemble is a walking foot. A walking foot is also referred to as an even feed foot, meaning that the fabric is fed through the sewing machine evenly through the top and the bottom. I would use this particular stitch for a garment that is more loose fitting. I always want to top stitch on the top. I think we want to cheat sometimes and stitch on the bottom side so that we can see where we are, but I want to be evenly stitching from the right-hand edge, so my eye is following some sort of reference line on the right-hand side. So that's a straight stitch. Nice and even, and you can see there are no puckers and no peaks, and that's the secret, the gluing down and the walking foot, the two processes that you will want to become involved with. In addition, you can have a double needle technique. You can use a double needle that is installed on a single shank, so you'll have two thread sources. You get this double row. This is what you see very much in ready-to-wear, and this is the sewer's version of the ready-to-wear look. On the back side, you see a zigzag stitch, but you still have that raw edge. But a third method is really the most professional. This looks like the double needle technique, but this is actually done on a cover stitch machine. You can buy that as a dedicated serger-like machine. Sometimes it's available as an extra feature on a serger. But the nice thing about this stitch is it's very flat. If you'll see the difference here, the double needle, there's a little bit of a rise between the two rows of stitching, but on the cover stitch it's very flat, and on the back side it completely covers the raw edge. Prepare your hems, figure out how to stitch your hems, and you're there.